There are tons of hat patterns out there. I mean, they are one of the most practical things you can crochet. I bet most of the hats that you've made have been crocheted in rounds, which is totally fine, but let's try something different. This is the most interesting hat you'll ever crochet. We have 5 sizes available, and no matter which size you want to make, you'll start with a big long chain. This will be the length of the hat. That pattern, by the way, can be viewed completely free on our website, or if you'd just really like to support this channel, you can pick up the PDF from our shop. They're all going to start out with a big long chain, and of course the number of chains that you'll make is dependent on the size. It looks like a braid, right? That's the front of the chain. But when you flip it over, it kind of looks like a spine. We've got all these little bumps, and I like to work my slip stitches, no matter which project I'm working on, in these back bumps because it's just a little bit cleaner, and honestly it's a little easier. So that's all there is to the first row. No matter which size you're working on, you're going to work it in the same way. From here is where things get a little bit different. Notice how the crown is segmented. As complicated as the pattern may look at first glance, it's pretty easy to memorize once you understand how it all comes together. Each of these little triangular crown segments is a crown segment repeat in the pattern. Notice there are 3 of them total, and the 4th segment is split up, with half worked at the beginning and half worked at the end. Each segment has 2 angles, and each angle is achieved with a technique called short rows. Short rows are used quite frequently when knitting complex shaping for things like socks, but you don't see it nearly as often in crochet. And it's honestly one of the neatest little tricks you can have up your sleeve. So anytime you're looking at or working on an even numbered row, in this case we're working on row number 2, this end here is the band, and this end down here is the crown. Now the other thing that's going to change from size to size is the thickness of the band. So you'll want to refer to the pattern in order to get those specific instructions. Work your hook into just the back loop of that stitch and slip stitch. So that's 1 band stitch, and I'm going to keep going with that. So that's what we're used to seeing. This is the slip stitch ribbing that we saw in our previous video. We are here in this pattern, and we're going to be working on this little piece of shaping, this little angle right here. So from here, we're going to transition into single crochets. Still working in the back loop. We're just going to single crochet into each stitch until only 2 remain. So again, when you have 2 stitches left at the end of this second row, you're going to leave them unworked. This is how simple short rows really are. From here, you'll chain 1 and turn. You're always going to chain 1 and turn, and that chain 1 is never going to count as a stitch throughout this entire pattern. Instead of slip stitching in the back loop only, like you do for the band, you'll use both loops of the stitch, which will give the hat a little more texture overall. Remember though, those last several stitches are the band stitches, and you will need to slip stitch in the back loop only to maintain the slip stitch ribbing. Now I do have a couple words of advice when it comes to slip stitching. These stitches, you know, they're really great for a lot of things. They're very versatile in some ways because they are the shortest stitch, but they're also kind of the biggest pain because they're the shortest stitch. So what I do to, you know, kind of make this doable and not too fussy, I like to yarn over and pull through, and then really exaggerate this motion where I pull my hook up so that this loop is kind of at the same height as this one here before I pull that through. If you were to just pull through, kind of leave it here and then just go right into it, that's going to make the stitch tighter, and then the next row that you work it's going to be kind of a nightmare to work into because it's going to be too tight. The secret to slip stitching is to make it a little more loose than you would normally crochet. Anytime you find yourself looking at the back side of the work, every stitch you'll make is a slip stitch, but they're worked in different places based on the row sections. Now bear with me, this is a cream colored yarn on a white table. I know you guys hate that. Sorry. But I think you got the idea here. This is what we're going for when we're making these short rows. And so when we repeat rows 2 and 3, you're going to end up with a shape that's like this. You've got your band section down here at the bottom. You've got the hat sides. Is that really the technical term for that? Like, you know what I'm talking about. It's not the crown, it's not the band, it's like, not the band, not the beard. Oh my gosh. It's not the band, it's not the crown, it's the stitches in between. And then we have our crown shaping. But we can't just leave these little steps here at the end. We need to tidy those up a little bit. See this loop right here. This is part of our chain in our chain 1 and turn. Stick your hook just right through it and then pretend that it's not even there. Then insert your hook in the back loop of the next single crochet over, the one that's just directly down from it, and make a single crochet as if that extra loop weren't even there. And then continue with a single crochet in the back loop of the next stitch. So if I were to just leave that there and single crochet over these next 2, that's what it would look like. It just leaves this little bump there that just really doesn't have to be there. So that's why we do it. So there we have our first half segment of the crown. We essentially have this little section completed. So with this angle completed and moving on to this one here, a new short row strategy is used for the other angle. You'll find this section of the pattern labeled crown segment, and this set of instructions includes the repeat for both angles. This angle is achieved by leaving stitches unworked, and this angle is made by picking up stitches 2 at a time. You're going to leave a bunch of stitches unworked at the end of this row. I had 5 little steps, so I had 10 stitches that were open. So I want to leave 10 stitches unworked at the end of this first row. Then chain 1 and turn and work your regular row 3 repeat. Now from here, you guessed it, chain 1 and turn, work your band stitches, and then work yourself until you get to that last single crochet you made. We have that little bump here because of the chain 1, but we can easily fix that. Insert your hook through it just like you did before, and then find the next stitch below, the back loop of the next stitch. And make a single crochet just as if that extra loop isn't there. And then you'll make 1 more single crochet in the back loop of the next stitch. And then chain 1 and turn. So we're still working short rows here, but we're just doing it in the opposite direction. And that's what's going to give us that opposite lean. Once you finish all the instructions here, you'll jump back to the beginning, work through it again for the second full crown segment, jump back to the beginning, and finish the third full crown segment. And this will lead you into the last half of the first segment, which is crocheted exactly the same as this was here. Now this arguably is probably the most important step in this entire hat, because if you don't get this part right, well, there's a very visible seam on the back. Look at the edge of your work and find this ridge right here. Now look even closer and you'll see these loops right here. They're just right along the edge. It's not really like a V as in a stitch because it's kind of a combination of some stitches here, but this is the loop you want to look for. Now with my hook attached here, I'm going to find that first one. And then over on the other side, we're going to find this braid or this row of V's and put your hook under both of those loops. Then yarn over and pull through everything. So we're just slip stitching here, but we have to do it in a really particular place so that it looks neat when everything is seamed up. So now find your next little loop there. and your next stitch on the other side, and slip stitch. If you do it in other ways, you can see the seam. Trust me, I tried over and over and over, and this is by far the one that I found that is the least noticeable. See how when we do it that way, it just kind of blends in with the rest of the hat pattern. So when we get down to the band, things are a little bit more flexible here because we're just working with our slip stitch ribbing. And that same loop placement that I've been working in, and then over on the other side, just catch the outermost loop, or the back loop, whatever you want to call it. When you're happy with the join, fasten off, weave in those tails, and you'll need to trim another long tail to close up the little hole here at the top. If you have any questions whatsoever about this project, the supplies I used, or any of those finer details, I can almost guarantee you'll find those answers in the pattern. So once again, I'll have the free pattern linked in the description below. Also, if you want to support the channel, or if you just want to have a PDF version, like a hard copy that you can print or something that you can save to your device, we have that option for you too. You can pick up the PDF from our shop, and I'll have a link for that as well. I hope you enjoyed this different style of tutorial too. It was certainly really fun for me to put together. The bottom line is I'm just experimenting. I'm trying new things. I enjoyed that. If you enjoyed it, let me know that in the comments. That's super helpful for me to know moving forward. Happy hooking, and I'll see you in the next one.